What's going on, everybody? Eric Lindquist at Stochastic here on the OddsShopper channel, coming to you with a Week 1 NFL edition of Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. Hit that like button, subscribe button, notification bell goes a long way for me on this video. Goes a long way for you. That way you become a prize whenever great content is going live here at our little neck of the YouTube woods on our video. Opening it up on Thursday night, 2-1, but of course, the lock doesn't come through. The Derrick Henry, he got targeted twice, both times. Endless space in front of him. Lamar Jackson threw it out in front of him, and Derrick Henry did not go catch the football. Actually, it was bad throws on both of them, but for the most part, still felt okay about that read. Probably wasn't as good as looking at potentially Justice Hill and getting to some of those receiving yards. Ended up having a little bit of that rotated around in pick'em cards, talking through some of that in the premium Discord, which you can sign up for down below. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but there's really no time to dilly-dally. We're talking Week 1, Sunday NFL. It's so good to have you here. If it's your first time checking out my videos, let me explain how I do things. We have leans, we have likes, we have locks. I'm talking you through my favorite play, or sometimes a couple of plays rotating around, usually the same player, but I'm talking you through my favorite play from every single game on Sunday, excluding Sunday Night Football, because we'll do that as a standalone video. But leans, those are things I'm thinking about betting, or I have no interest in betting that game specifically. Alike, those are generally around a half unit unless I specify otherwise. And well, I've got a tight end play. I've got two tight end plays that I really do like. I will bring both of those up, but one of them that is featured and showcased and talked about when we get to the Chargers game, those are going to be less than a half unit play because, well, they're plus 420, plus 440, but I think they're great bets still. Positive expected value. And then the locks, I've got a couple of them. Well, I've got one of those on this program here today, but that is my favorite play from the entire gamut. It's my favorite play of the entire window of games. It's usually right around a unit, maybe more, depending on, are you able to react to the news in the moment or not? Again, this is made to be something that you can see on Saturday or Sunday, that we can still talk through some of the numbers. I'll explain where they are at the present time as I record this on Friday afternoon, and you can use it to inform your decision-making and your betting. Sound great? Awesome. Can't wait to break down everything that we have here on Sunday. I'll talk through Stochastic and this dollar kickoff deal that we have. I'll talk you through the marketplace as we go, but producer Jacob's ready. I'm ready. Week 1 Sunday main slate. Let's get to the picks. There's certain stands that you make during the course of an NFL season, and I would say the Arizona Cardinals, from a fantasy perspective, is certainly one that I am very heavily invested in. Let's talk through some of the changes. Well, Arizona, Kyler Murray missed the first half of last season as he was working back from the knee injury, and he looked fantastic, in my opinion, towards the tail end of that season. I think he has top 4 quarterback upside from a fantasy perspective. Does that translate into real life football? That always kind of depends, but I have to feel really good, or if you're an Arizona Cardinals fan, you have to feel really good about what you saw from him against Philadelphia and some of those games towards the end of last season where he was doing it with very, very little. You have Hollywood Brown, who exits to Kansas City, currently hurt and had that shoulder issue, and led to Xavier Worthy going ballistic. That was fun to watch and very limited target share. But we've got a massive upgrade at the wide receiver position with Marvin Harrison Jr., one of the top wide receiver prospects we've seen in football in quite some time, dominated at Ohio State, was an unbelievable talent there, comes from the lineage of Marvin Harrison, of course, pretty darn good himself. Shout out Peyton Manning. Those were good times. But we're looking at the Buffalo side on the road. Obviously, Buffalo, they are fantastic themselves. They have Dalton Kincaid, who I think is probably going to lead this team in target share at the end of the day. Keon Coleman, a pretty nice upgrade. Going to be him versus Xavier Worthy in the minds of a lot of Buffalo fans and the NFL, to be exact. But I look at the Arizona side, and I think one guy stands out above the rest, but I don't know if I can pull the trigger on it here yet. It's Greg Dortch. I think his ceiling is so high because towards the end of last season, including that Philadelphia game I brought up before, started to really cut into the target share of every other wide receiver. He was the guy with Hollywood Brown out, with some of the other pieces. Rondale Moore really didn't come to fruition. He goes to Atlanta, gets hurt before this season starts. Greg Dortch over 25.5 is my favorite play currently from this one, but I think this spread is perfectly efficient. I think Arizona would be where I would be leaning on this one as well. But Greg Dortch, if you have to have something from it, I think he has a massive upside for Arizona this season. Just feel like I'll wait and see as we go along. Of course, you can't wait too long when it comes to some of your priors, and I think a lot of people's priors when we talk about the New England side of things, Well, Jacoby Brissett is starting your week one. That can't feel very good. You draft Drake May, tons of draft capital there, first round draft capital, and yet not getting the start for a rebuilding New England team that currently has like 4.5s, 5s, 5.5s as far as win totals. I like those unders. I know 5.5 is like juice towards minus 200 now, so not as appealing as what it once was. But let's talk Cincinnati, because I think out of all injury news that we have here on Friday afternoons, this is the biggest one. You got T. Higgins, the wide receiver 2 here for Cincinnati, doubtful to play now against New England. This is the biggest spread that we have on all of week one. This is going to be the people in Survivor who are paying the closest attention to it. And as much as I want to back Cincinnati in some capacity here, because I do think New England is going to be dust, and to dust they shall return, it's really hard to pull the trigger, not knowing also the status of contract holdout Jamar Chase. He did practice the last couple of days. I did fire some overs on a couple of his receiving props before they got pulled off the board. And I think Yoshi Iashivas, he's going to probably end up being your wide receiver 1/2 based on what happens with Jamar Chase here. But I don't have T. Higgins playing in this football game. I think Iashivas is somebody that has some talent, has gotten some great coach speak, some great speak from Joe Burrow himself. And we saw some pronounced upside from him at times over the course of last season when called upon. And I think another year in the books underneath any offense in the NFL is a positive thing. But Mike Gesicki will probably have to be on the field a little bit more. I know that they're going more towards the Hudson and sample sizes blocking tight ends, but if they need to have receivers on the field, I don't feel as good, because I do work through some of these New England pieces. They get Gonzalez back into the mix. He's been out for a year, a very highly touted cornerback from Oregon from 2 seasons ago, but sitting at 40.5 for a total now, I think that's about appropriate. But what I don't think appropriate is this Cincinnati team total. I like the under of 24.5 at this point in time. 40.5 is a little bit of a dip. We've seen it go from 42, 41.5 post Higgins news, but the team total stays up. That didn't get pulled down by the books by any means. It's not going to react to the news. And if Chase somehow, some way does not play, this is a Hulk smash type play. I think it's a better play taking the team total under than it is trying to back New England plus 7.5 at the current iteration. Obviously, that number will change if you don't have Chase in addition to Higgins. Yeah, a lot of people know that I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan. It's a sad, sad existence that we live. But you know, the nice thing is that at least you get some kind of predictability, which is every single season, the Minnesota Vikings will find new and surprising ways of disappointing you. And our disappointment happened before the season even started, as J.J. McCarthy, who we invested first-round draft capital into, is already out for the season. Yep, knee surgery, goodbye. Going to be sitting out watching Sam Darnold take the ball. Now, Kevin O'Connell, our head coach, he comes from the Sean McVay. I feel like there are so many coaches that come from the Sean McVay, LA Rams, the way of doing things. And, well, O'Connell is probably the most prevalent of those offensive minds. I think he's a really good quarterback developer. But what are you really developing here? We kind of know who Sam Darnold is. He's going to be very keyed in on Justin Jefferson in his first reads. He's going to be waiting for TJ Hawkinson to get back, because currently you don't want Johnny Munt to be the guy. I know that there are some people that think there's actual viability to him at the moment. I don't really see it. And then defensively, we did do some things to address the secondary. Specifically, we went out and made a splash signing, if you will, right before the season started, finding our ways onto Stephon Gilmore for a 1-year, $10 million deal. That was a little bit surprising. He's probably going to be going to Malik Neighbors a lot, but I got to throw this out there. Malik Neighbors, I could not possibly be higher on as an individual talent. And I do think the Giants with Dable, they're going to find a way to be semi-functional very, very quickly. Or it's going to be another throwaway season where they pack it in and try to go after a quarterback either in the draft or in free agency and really throw some money around there, because the Giants, big market team, they're not going to sit around in mediocrity for very long. Now, they did use first pick equity on Thibodeau. Hasn't worked out the same way that they were expecting there, but I think defensively, there's enough there. And Jordan Addison, I'm a little bit lower on post Kirk Cousins. I don't know really what we get from him. He was an alpha once upon a time at Pittsburgh, but had some weird seasons at USC, even alongside Caleb Williams. And I think we can all agree, based on what we saw in the preseason, I value Caleb Williams pretty high. So it's going to be a lot of Justin Jefferson. And yeah, he's a dynamic, unbelievable wide receiver. But on the road, week 1, Sam Darnold going back to the Meadowlands on the, the jet once upon a time, but still the Meadowlands. Can't feel very good about that. So I'm on the Giants side of this one. Yes, parents, do not get rid of me. I'm a great son. Oh, and Malik Neighbors is an absolute freak. So, of course, I'm looking at alternate 100-yard because I don't want to be wrong about Malik Neighbors. Like, I know that I'm not wrong about Malik Neighbors. If he stays healthy, we're talking about a 1,000-yard receiver, no doubt in my mind. I know he was going high on a lot of people's fantasy boards, but as he should, he is an absolute alpha. Next up, kind of a fascinating matchup. Just talking about Caleb Williams. He's going to be walking into the best situation. I know this is kind of one of those talking points that every talking head has, but I'm going to at least reiterate it for you because I do believe it to be true. Caleb Williams is walking into probably the best situation we've seen for a number 1 draft pick ever at the quarterback position. Ever. Maybe not from a coaching perspective, but for sure, I mean, first-year coaching is what it is. But it's going to be a fascinating case study, if you will, with Caleb Williams, considering he has Keenan Allen. He's got Rome Odunze, who was awesome at Washington, and I think made Michael Penix really shine. And then on the outside, of course, DJ Moore, who is a number 1 as well, an absolute stud. We saw him in Carolina do a lot with a little. In Chicago, did a lot with Justin Fields. What a time to be alive. Also, Russell Wilson questionable, and that's going to be a fascinating talking point now. But anywho, Tennessee plus 3.5. I think that's pretty darn efficient. I do think Tennessee is going to try to do everything they can to establish a little bit of the run because Will Levis, you don't know how you feel about him going forward here in Tennessee. I think they did everything they could to upgrade the skill position around him, getting Calvin Ridley from Jacksonville, bringing him in-house. Conquo, it's kind of weird to see him not win the tight end position from a pass-catching perspective. And then Tajay Spears, Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard, some of the worst running metrics last season with the Cowboys, with a better offensive line. See how he fares here in Tennessee. It'll be an interesting one. They said they're going to split it 50-50 here from the get-go. But from a prop perspective, one thing shines above the rest. And at 15.5, this was a lot that I threw into the premium Discord, which we'll talk about here in a second, how you could join that and hang out with me and get all those bets exactly when I place them. But Caleb Williams is still at 18.5 rushing yards. Don't forget, you go back to some of those college games, you get penalized for sacks. That goes against your rushing total. And we routinely saw him, specifically in Oklahoma, in some of those shootout spots, 40, 50, 60 rushing yards. I don't think he's getting enough equity here going up against a Tennessee defense that looks stout to some degree here. Should have enough to be able to get after the quarterback here. And I do have some question marks, at least on the Chicago Bears offensive line to a certain extent. You have Jenkins, you have Wright, but on the interior with Shelton at the center position, Nate Davis as well. These are guys that aren't highly graded by PFF and aren't highly graded by a lot of people that I trust in terms of offensive line efficiency. I think Caleb Williams might be scattering around a little bit more than people think. DeAndre Swift, doubt he'll be crazy involved here in the pass game, and it probably turns into Caleb Williams' rushing attack. Got him closer to 30, 35 yards here. Again, that's from a mean perspective. We're talking the median, and I think the median is still way above this line. So 18.5 rushing yards, not as good of a play. 3-yard difference really, really matters when you're talking about quarterback rushing, but I definitely like it. I'd also really like if you guys would hang out in that marketplace with me, not just because I need to have friends in a Discord, but because I love talking through bets, and we have a lot of sharp people hanging out. I'm surprised every single day by some of the incredible plays people are coming up with in the baseball streets. Can't wait to really get rocking on an NFL Sunday, talking through plays, putting stuff together in cards, getting your plays to you in the moment with notifications in that insider marketplace, which is now live here at OddsShopper. If you go to the link below and you use promo code Lindy50, yes, LINDY50, this is live until next Thursday. Yes, you have until next Thursday to take advantage of $10 for your first week or $25 for your first month of my marketplace where you get my picks with the OddsShopper app instantaneously. As soon as I place a bet, I'm usually writing an absolute dissertation about every single specific play so you can know where I'm coming from, how I'm modeling things out, what matters the most to me. Are we reacting to immediate news like we did, being able to fire up some Jamar Chase overs? Are we looking at Iashivas? What is it that you are going to be betting on NFL Sunday? Well, if I'm betting it, you will be seeing it. And that also counts for the MLB streets, which I know a lot of you followed me along with. So if you want to check it out, promo code Lindy50, 50% off your first week or month. Alrighty, y'all, back to the picks. We have the Carolina Panthers and the New Orleans Saints. And Mr. Allen, I mean, this is just such a strange coaching situation here. They're in New Orleans. They're only laying 3.5 to potentially one of the worst teams that we had seen last season. And coming into this year, the profile doesn't look a lot better. Acquiring Deontay Johnson, I think that helps because some of his separation numbers are no doubt impressive over at PFF. But as you grade out Carolina, I find it crazy how many people sharp people that I talk to who are all over the Carolina side in this specific ball game. I'm not necessarily seeing it right now, and here's why. I don't trust anything that we're seeing from Bryce Young. I don't know how you could. I don't know how you could instill any kind of confidence. Now, could it get worse? He was my 27th graded quarterback out of everybody from last season. And again, there are many pieces. There are 40 plus quarterbacks because, there's a lot of quarterbacks that get replaced or people get hurt. I've seen that how many times, and saw like 3 of them in Minnesota that didn't inspire awe after the Kirk Cousins injury. But Bryce Young had a terrible rookie season. It can't possibly get worse, right? Well, you do go get Deontay Johnson. You at least get Miles Sanders off the field, and it looks like we're going to get a good dose of Chuba Hubbard before Jonathan Brooks comes in to relieve his duties once he gets healthy and worked back up. But I don't think I can pull the trigger on it, but I at least want to throw this out there. I have no prop that stands out to me from this one whatsoever. I do like Kamara's outlook going forward here. You saw Captain check down himself, Derek Carr, last season. Still almost hit 4,000 yards, had 25 touchdowns and just 8 picks. People are talking about him as dust, and I think he looked a lot better than that. I think Chris Olave has a decent season himself. He's one of the higher picks in drafts, top 2 or second round, like mid-second round guy in just about everybody's fantasy drafts. But as you work through it, Rashid Shaheed, not going to be helping out the position a whole lot. How does Taysom Hill factor in another year on the tires of just doing gadget play after gadget play after gadget play? I don't know. Maybe there is something to it. So I'll at least throw out Carolina. If you're getting 4, is a little bit interesting to me. 4.5. I saw some people at 5 earlier in the season, but these lines have been out for like 6 months, 5 months. They've gotten pretty hyper efficient, and obviously Carolina keeps plumbing down a little bit at a time. There's something to it. I don't necessarily see it. So a game that, again, we're going to have a lot of football to bet on. I think I'll just pass on this one. And a game that I am absolutely all over and will not be passing on, the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. And one thing that did pop up on the injury report that's a little bit fascinating, Russell Wilson, who did win the week, he won the week 1 job. That was a mouthful right there. Russell Wilson, another guy who was hyper efficient last season, 26 touchdowns, 8 picks, but you saw such short yardage stuff and couldn't necessarily get it downfield and made terrible decisions in the clutch. And, well, shipped out of Denver. It's the Bo Nix era. That's going to be fun to discuss. Quack, quack. But Russell Wilson, he's questionable now. He was limited in practice on Friday. He's officially listed as questionable. I don't think there's a ton to it. I think he's fine, but sounds like he was a little bit dinged up on Thursday from practicing and just wasn't moving around well. And you're looking at injury reports being very, very sensitive now. The Kyle Pitts one, that's going to be what we get to next. But I want to start on the Russell Wilson side of things because, well, he matters a lot. Because if it ends up being Justin Fields, I don't think I would like this nearly as much. And yet, it's still going to be my favorite play of the entire week 1. So I'll get to that in a second. Let's touch on Atlanta here because I did throw a couple of plays in that premium Discord already on Ray McLeod. Just a normal way to start things off. And Darnell Mooney. Kirk Cousins takes over for the Atlanta Falcons. They use first-round draft capital on Michael Penix Jr., which not super intelligent, if you ask me. If you're going to spend $50 million a year on a quarterback coming off of an Achilles tear, what a time to be alive. But I suppose it's as fancy of an insurance policy as you can possibly get, getting a lefty spinner out there, call it a day. But Kirk Cousins, I do believe this, even as a Vikings fan, where obviously his era was disappointing when you look at it in hindsight, but we were better. We were relevant. We were rather good when Kirk Cousins was at the helm. And at least on the offensive side, there were no question marks that he can get the ball to the guys he needs to get the ball to in the right spots of the field. He gets 2 unbelievable talents in Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I think everybody is much, much higher, as they should be, on both of their outlooks. But I'm going to be on a wait and see approach on those 2. But we got in early on Darnell Mooney, over 28.5 receiving yards. It has now been pushed up to 35.5. I don't think I'm going to be putting that on the card for the people. And Ray McLeod, I think he wins the slot early on. You could probably make it interchangeable. Darnell Mooney did play some slot in Chicago once upon a time. I think he's probably the more advantageous number, 16.5, 17.5, as long as you're paying juice inside of minus 115. But those plays pale in comparison to my favorite play from this game, which is Najee Harris. I do think we still see Russell Wilson out there playing football on Sunday. I know they're talking about his tightness on Thursday. I think it's a little bit of precautionary. I'm trying not to overreact to too many injury reports in the early portion of this outside of the Higgins one, which felt like a red flag from the get-go on Thursday. But here on Friday afternoon, Najee Harris, even with Jaylen Warren coming off of a hamstring injury and had practiced in full the last couple of days, do we assume that Najee Harris isn't going to be like the featured back here? I'm going to assume that Najee Harris is still the featured back. They are slight dogs, so it's a running back that you're going to back to catch a football, who didn't really catch a lot of footballs once upon a time, but there is no question that Arthur Smith, going back into Atlanta, wants to pound the football against his former team and try to stick it to the fantasy community and the Atlanta community at large, coming off of his firing where he apparently knew better than everybody. There's a little bit of arrogance to it, but the tail end of last season against Baltimore and Buffalo, we saw Najee Harris start to get intertwined into the passing game a little bit more in a very different situation for what it's worth. I mean, Kenny Pickett now, Philadelphia, Gonski, Mason Rudolph, those are wild days. But Najee Harris has his receiving yards prop at 6.5. 6.5, minus 110 at BetMGM. Standard juice. I think Najee Harris is in line for more targets than that. He can get there on 2 targets. I've got him closer to 30 receiving yards in this one, 27 and change. Now we're looking at this from a median perspective, a little bit differently, which brings it down a little bit, but yet it's my favorite play from the entire weekend. Najee Harris is going to catch your football. I see this happening in like the first drive of the game. In fact, over 6.5 receiving yards at the tail end of last season, targeted 7 times, caught 7 catches on 8 targets it was for 36 yards. I'll take 16 yards. I'll take 10 yards. These are all great things. Not going to be playing like any alternate lines on this one. Just give me that. And then nearly plus 200 for a guy that could potentially be the bell cow in the event that Warren is limited. I think that's at least intriguing and wanted to give you the option. The shootout of the weekend, Jacksonville, Miami, 49 total going to South Beach, hanging out with Mr. McDaniel, who, he can call some plays. He understands misdirection. He understands pre-snap motion. He understands how to utilize a guy as special as Tyreek Hill. But to be fair, a lot of people could utilize Tyreek Hill pretty special. Jacksonville's really the question mark that I have here for this one. Jacksonville, though, I think did a lot of smart things this offseason. First off, Trevor Lawrence has always been a guy who prefers X wide receivers. What do I mean by that? Guys inside the slot, well, he's got a pretty reliable guy here in Christian Kirk at this point in time, and we have seen them have some really good rapport in the early on going, but Calvin Ridley didn't necessarily fit them from a schematic perspective. And what I mean by that is I think Gabe Davis makes some sense on the outside, and I really like this acquisition that they got in Mr. Brian Thomas. He was the other part of a Malik Neighbors ridiculous trio that they had alongside Samuel there at LSU. And I could not be higher on Brian Thomas and Evan Ingram for this season from a fantasy perspective. Going through some of their yardages, I can't believe how many times they are going to be going over those numbers. I think Brian Thomas, he was sitting in the low 40s last time I checked. That might end up as a play for me. Want to kind of take it easy in some spots, but for the people who aren't playing props explicitly, I love this over of 49. I think it's a really good spot to invest your money. I don't see a lot of ways that Miami slows them down. They did just pay Jalen Ramsey a lot of money on Friday. It's going to be a fun one for sure, but I trust McDaniel and the Mostert and Devon Achane. The ridiculous backfield and alignment we have there. But defensively, I think this is going to be a very, very weak unit on the whole. And I don't think there's a lot on the Jacksonville side outside of Hines Allen, who is one of the premier edge rushers in football. He has been for quite some time there. But Darby's okay. Savage is okay. But overall, I look at the Miami defense, and outside of Ramsey, who's another year on the tires, and Fuller, who's going to be lining up on Brian Thomas mostly, Holland, Poyer, another year. Can Holland keep up this style of play for very long? It's an Oregon Duck. I love the guy, but I really think points are at Miami's going to just make Jacksonville keep pace. Trevor Lawrence has the right skill set around him for the first time in his entire tenure. Travis Etienne, one of the premier running backs, too, two-way running backs or pass-catching running backs. Love this over of 49. Smash that like button, subscribe button, notification bell as we start breaking down Houston at Indy. And I will say, if you were to just look out at this from an outside perspective from last year to this season, this is kind of ringing alarm bells in your head. It is one of those things where you're looking at about 3-point difference for road. Would Indy, on the other side, though, be only 2.5 or 3 on the road in Houston? No, I would argue this would be closer to 4.5, 5. And that's where I have the alarm bells going off somewhat here, is where this line is being set at. But Anthony Richardson gets back into the fold. Kind of scary to see Joe Flacco behind him if you drafted him from a fantasy perspective, purely because if things go poorly for Indy in a division that, with Houston ascending to the top and Tennessee trying to do some things, in the AFC South is at least a little bit interesting. This time around. But Anthony Richardson, he was motoring before getting hurt last season. I'm excited to see him back in Indy's offense, but going to be missing Josh Downs, and that's who we really had the best connection with in the early going and very limited sample size, of course, of 2023. As for Houston, they had Stephon Diggs. Defensively, they continue to look stout and impressive. And yet I'm leaning towards the Indy side of things here. Houston has all the pressure and all the land to be exceptional. And CJ Stroud, he's probably the player that I've been the most wrong about in the history of me breaking down football. There just hadn't been an Ohio State quarterback who really exceeded what they did at that school, purely because there's always great skill position players around you at Ohio State. And we haven't seen a quarterback who ascended or was transcendent amongst that talent yet until CJ Stroud. So I'm probably staying away from this game entirely. Curious to see how the targets break down between Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, and then, of course, the alpha, the guy that we all assume in Nico Collins to be the number one there out of Michigan. But Indy +3 purely because defensively, I think this is an improved group. I think offensively, they're going to be able to establish some run against Houston, even with Jonathan Taylor. Probably just staying away from this game altogether. Let's get weird, shall we? The Vegas Raiders. So long, Josh McDaniel. Thanks for coming. Have a nice day. And then the Chargers. I mean, they said goodbye and good riddance. My God, bringing in Mr. Harbaugh. This is going to be a lot of fun to watch Jim Harbaugh coach the Chargers team for the press conferences, whether it goes good or bad. We're going to get fantastic press conferences, and I'm looking forward to that one. Plus, you can, basically go kick rocks now because it's hard to get banned by the NCAA for violations if you're in the NFL. So there you go. Just don't do the, not Deflategate, but all the New England stuff. I don't know what I'm getting at here. I have the weirdest play ever, though, in this one. The Vegas Raiders taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Max Crosby, obviously, this is a dude who transcends everything you know about edge rushing. This guy is on another planet. Producer Jacob knows. But a sub 40 total? This is now sitting sub 40 in a lot of places. 40.5, the opening number, or been lingering around that for a while. Purely because we do know Harbaugh is going to try to establish the run here in the early going. But without Kellen Moore there, moving on, obviously with the entire coaching regime from the former Chargers there, heads over towards Philadelphia and now going to be coaching up Devonta Smith. Hopefully tonight. That'll be fun. I'm looking at a really, really long shot play in Will Dissly here. Justin Herbert. We saw him key in on the tight end position with Gerald Everett, who's ironically the other tight end that I was talking about now with the Chicago Bears, plus 600, his touchdown. How about a little bit of plus 420 over at FanDuel? Yeah, smoke if you got him. Will Dissly should be on the field a ton for the Chargers, and we saw Donald Parham Jr. have that red zone target share that exceeded his talent level for however many seasons, despite what you saw in the XFL with him. I think Will Dissly at this kind of a number, when you're talking about a low total game and points are at a premium, I kind of like taking a stab here at this long of a number, considering Joshua Palmer. You've had a dinged up McConkey here the entire preseason for a rookie. Will Dissly is going to be on the field nonstop from a blocking perspective. Why not take some shots on a guy who's been a functional enough pass catcher back in his days in Seattle? Speaking of functional, Bet365, a great opportunity to get yourself $200 in bonus bets, and here's how. You go to the link below. You bet $5 on anything if you are in a state that is supported by Bet365, Pennsylvania being the newest of them. I know North Carolina, Virginia, Arizona, Iowa. If you have Bet365 available to you, check it out down at the link below. Bet 5, get $200 in bonus bets. Great opportunity to get yourself a huge bankroll booster to start off this NFL season. It's only if you're 21 and over, 18 and over in Kentucky. If you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. Back to the picks. We got 3 games left to go. Hit the like button, subscribe button, notification bell as we talk the Bo Nix. The Bo Nix era here in Denver wins that the quarterback. I had no question. Bo Nix is already like 24, 25 years old. He's older, comes from Auburn to Oregon for a couple of years. Really refined himself as an accurate passer, which is obviously something Sean Payton has some familiarity with in Mr. Drew Brees, another undersized quarterback who did pretty well for himself in the National Football League, I would say. But we're going into Seattle here for Denver, and Denver, despite the fact that they just gave Surtain a lot of money here on Friday, I have some questions on this defensive side where I think you could see some major major establishing of the run here between Zach Charbonnet and, of course, Kenneth Walker III. You have Metcalf, you have Smith and Jigba, who is set for a breakout year out of the slot. And I will say Denver, depending on how they're going to be playing a lot of their base personnel, I'm assuming we'll get a lot more zone. Smith and Jigba, somebody in the middle of that field that I'm going to be paying very, very close attention to with his props as well. But I want to start with Kenneth Walker and finish with Kenneth Walker. This is a Seattle run-first football team. That is what they're going to do. That is how they're going to do it. Anybody who tells you otherwise hasn't watched a lot of Seattle football the last couple of years, because even with Metcalf and Lockett, two premier skill players, and Geno Smith, who has outperformed a lot of what people expect for him in the post, it's kind of like New York. But anyway, we've got ourselves an interesting Kenneth Walker perspective, because I think he gets the lion's share of carries in positive game scripts. And I think Denver, they're going to develop Bo Nix. I think he has a decent enough year here, but defensively, they have so many warts, so many issues. And Barton and Singleton, I'm primarily looking at the linebacker position there from the Denver Broncos. Surtain should be doing enough. I can't see him lining up against Metcalf. I think that ends up probably being Riley Moss on the other side. Oh boy, good luck to you, Riley Moss. Have a fun one. But I'm going to be looking at Kenneth Walker, rushing the football a lot. Looked at his carries as well. We could see like 17 and a half, 18 and a half. Take some overs. But I'm just going to be jamming probably something to do with the running game here, or the Seattle side between him and Smith and Jigba. But as of right now, that's the one I'm leaning towards. Seattle, get ready for it. You're going to have a terrible year, but it's going to be fun to watch you offensively. No, it's not. No, it's not. Oh, baby. Dallas, Cleveland. Oh, boy. 41.5 total here. CeeDee Lamb joins this football team a little bit late, but, always there when you call. But I'm always... Yeah, Jerry Jones finally had to nut up and shut up and pay the man his monies, which is great. And now we're going to see whatever happens with Jamar Chase. Hopefully he's on the field playing a lot on Sunday, because I do have those overs on receiving yards. But we're going to cover this one. Cleveland. This is crazy to me that we are looking at some of the team total. First off, they're favored, which is pretty wild to me against a Dallas team that Mike McCarthy, things were great until they weren't towards the tail end of last season. Green Bay, your boy was on that one. That felt good. Green Bay money line in the playoffs. Those are good times. This is not going to be very good times, though, for scoring. I see an extremely low-scoring game coming here in Cleveland, and not because of weather, because, again, it's September. It's not exactly going to be freezing cold out there like it will be come playoff time. Week 17, Miami. That'll be a fun one to pay attention to for all you fantasy people. But Deshaun Watson is talking about arm fatigue, and the season hasn't started. That's really what kept him out of a lot of games last season, and they were going to DTR, Dorian Thomas-Robinson. They were going to a lot of ancillary pieces. It became Joe Flacco legend season in Cleveland, but I don't feel great hearing that kind of stuff about Deshaun Watson, who was a premier quarterback in his time in Houston before he did a lot of naughty things. He, paid his punishment to some extent there. But anywho, we're going to Cleveland, and I find this to be fascinating. First off, 41.5 for a total, and then the fact that they're favored here, so the implied total. I've looked at the team total, but I think I'm just going to take the entire portfolio, because what does Dallas get done on the run, like in the running game here? I like Rico Dowdle, not in this spot. Ezekiel Elliott, dust. They're going out and getting Dalvin Cook. What are we doing here? You got, what are we even having these discussions about with Dalvin Cook? You should not play it down. Complete dust. Again, did they even acquire him officially? It's just what it is, friends. Rico Dowdle, Ezekiel Elliott, not going to be getting it done against this Cleveland front. And, well, from a pass rush perspective, you're going to be targeting in on CeeDee Lamb repeatedly, and I just don't see this being good for anybody other than CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. I've got this closer to 34 points. This under is just a fantastic smash. My favorite play of the outrights here, my second favorite play on the weekend behind the Najee Harris play. Oh boy, oh boy. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Jerome Ford, are you going to do it to me on the Cleveland side? I think not. And our last game, probably the one that I'm the least excited about. Well, no, there's some unexciting games, but I do think Tampa Bay is an interesting bet, north of plus 300 to win the NFC South. Weak division, Atlanta, everybody's just crowning them already. I think guy coming up officially happened here, although I think the talent is there in a post-Arthur Smith era. But let's talk the Tampa Bay side a little bit more. Chris Godwin, can he stay healthy? Mike Evans, can he continue to put up 1,000-yard season after 1,000-yard season? I think it's probably more likely than not. I like some of the acquisitions, specifically Bucky Irving. Rachaad White was not a great rusher of the football there in pretty much any PFF metric as far as breaking tackles, elusiveness, nothing looking all that good there. So I think Bucky Irving has a chance to maybe surpass expectations for him across the marketplace. But I'm going to hit the brakes on week one. Once again, we're going to learn a lot after this first week one and then be able to adjust and fire up really, really short-sighted views by people. I'm already can't wait to see what Isaiah Likely's receiving prop is going to be for week two. Can you? It's going to be disastrous. But anywho, we got Washington acquiring Jaden Daniels. He is a pretty special talent on the ground. Can he continue to do it? Passing it, moving it around? I don't know. I like the Noah Brown acquisition. We'll see how much he's involved right from the get-go. I thought Luke McCaffrey is a good high upside dart throw. And then Terry McLaurin. Can he be your number one after they parted ways with Dotson, where it's not going to be Jahan Dotson anymore. He's in Philadelphia. So for me, friends, this is probably a pass of a football game, although the hold is extremely slow. And we're going to be talking a lot of around 3. 3 is a very key number, obviously, in the NFL. 3.5, that half point is so valuable on either sides of this, where you can play a little bit rent-free, vig-free when you get down to the end of it, where if you fire one side of it, you can maybe come in on the other side as the lines start to predict some of that line movement. But for right now, I think it's a pass all the way around. Plus 3.5 on the Washington side, purely because Tampa Bay, I think they have enough with Winfield, some of those guys in the secondary at the safety position, but it's an awful football game to bet. And that does it for the first week one full Sunday edition of Lindy's Leans, Likes, and Locks. Head to the comment section below. Let me know your favorite plays that exist on the board for this lovely introductory piece that we have for Lindy's going forward. We're going to be diving deeper and deeper into the analytics as we start going along with this season, start digging into more of the grading, trying to react as people are very nearsighted in the NFL, and then also people like to bet their overs. We're going to be looking at a lot more unders as we are going along, that's for sure. But check out Stokastic. That's the dollar deal. Use code KICKOFF. You can check out all of our DFS offerings, daily fantasy sports, that is. You can also check out the Portfolio EV. That is down at the link below as well, using code KICKOFF. TalkBet 365. Checked all the boxes here this week. It was fantastic stuff. If you guys want to sign up for anything down below, again, $1 for a week of access. Code KICKOFF for Stokastic for those daily fantasy tools. Alrighty, y'all. I'm going to get out of here. Until next time, I'm Eric Lindquist. Best of luck in the NFL streets here on week one, Sunday.